Hello, Mark Crossfield here, talking buying decisions around irons. I've got the TaylorMade M2 and the Mizuno JPX Easy. Two irons trying to film the same brief. Lots of questions asked saying, how do I know what is the right club? So many to pick from. Let's talk about a few buying decisions around two irons which are very much trying to do the same thing. So we've got two irons here, TaylorMade's M2 and the Mizuno JPX Easy. Both of these two irons are trying to fulfill a brief of giving you high MOI with distance. Now when I hit both of these irons, they both do that. They drop the spin off the ball, they launch it up at a reasonable height considering they're both quite low lofted, M2 very low lofted. And then they peak height at a very similar height as well, and then end up carrying a very similar distance. So how would I know which one to choose? I think some people in this data-driven era are using the data to find right or wrong. I use data a lot in my videos to try and show you that actually your feel is almost as good a point as any other in the buying process. That's the whole reason I started using data. It's interesting how people have interpreted it into more of a, or I'm a very data-driven person or whatever. I'm not. I'm using data to back up that actually feel is one of the overriding factors in this game. The thing is you can now start to measure what people are articulating through their feels with some actual data. So rather than just talking about if that blue is blue and if that black is black, you can actually confirm. So when I hit these two clubs, I think for you, you might find that you hit them very, very similar, or you might find that you hit one considerably better than the other. Now, the big thing with testing clubs is if you find that, you want to try and recreate that if you want to confirm that is a fact. If you hit one better and that's just good enough for you, that's great. Go again with your feelings. I hit that one better, it gave me more confidence, I want that one. Not a problem. The things you might want to consider with two irons like this, they're built for power, so how will it affect your pitching wedge going into your gap wedge? So both of these will have slightly different loft changes, meaning you might have a big hole at one end. What's the lowest iron you can cope with? They're both quite strong lofted. Like I say, the M2 is very low lofted, so when it gets up to the 4 iron or a 5 iron, it's so low lofted that you're now struggling to get the launch. But with its design, its very thick sole and its weight pulling off the face, it does launch and peak height very well, like they say. So even though the lofts are low, they have to be lower, TaylorMade say, because otherwise the peak height would go too high and you'd actually lose distance. So they're not, none of these clubs have kind of got magic in them. What they're trying to do is deliver a certain brief, which both of these are doing. So to pick over these, it's going to come down for me, looks, feel, sound, almost the same thing, if not the same, and then a bit of brand alliance. You know, your TaylorMade fan, M2 is going to tick all the boxes if you're looking for distance, keeping peak height, don't worry about it stopping the other end, and you're not fussed if it looks too slim or not. JPX Easy for the Mizuno fans, you're going to do the same things. You don't mind a bit of offset which is on them, chunkier top lines to other Mizuno irons, but you want distance and high MOI, which means hitting across the face as much help as possible. So get tested. Don't just look at that total distance number. I would work off carry. Don't just get seduced by that carry number as well. Make sure that carry number fits into your bag, into your style of play. Interesting point, when I've interviewed quite a few tour players, and I remember interviewing Darren Clark, first time I met with Darren Clark, and we talked about his irons. And I said, do you know the loft of your irons? I was interested to know how technical they get with their equipment. He said, I don't know the lofts of my irons, but I know exactly what distance each one goes. So what he was saying is he doesn't care what the loft is. The loft is what it has to be to make the iron go the distance it goes. So he doesn't mind if there's a 4-degree gap or 1-degree gap, as long as the 6 iron is going 170, 180, whatever the number be, and the 7 iron is in line with that. So going 160 if the other iron's going 170, those kind of things. So he knows what irons distance he hits his irons. He doesn't care what loft's on them, which I think is a really interesting way of looking at it. So many amateurs are just looking at sending it as far and far as possible, and I've got a bit seduced with that as well with the modern irons also. There you go, guys. Gives you a little bit of an overview, hopefully a bit of power on your fittings to go in there and maybe ask some of the right questions. You want to be knowing, will the ball stop the other end? You want to know where the distance is coming from, and you want to trust your feels and looks. Trust them more than anything else, and the fitter will work around them to get you the best possible club.